All right, so we're going to be talking about 5 ways to never quit. And I know that that's very general. There's probably 10 million videos on YouTube about how to never quit. But I want to give specifics to this. I want to give you a systematized approach to this. But then I also want to especially connect it to trauma, which is the thing that I help people with a lot. And trauma is a state of nervous system overwhelm. And it's where you feel frozen. Your body literally becomes frozen, and it's also called the immobilization response. And in the immobilization response, you don't want to do anything. Now, I work with tons of people. They just keep on living life, and their problem is they need to just include their body, right? They're physically living their life, but they're not interoceptive, the experience of the embodied self. They're not self-regulating. They don't have boundaries. They're not working from a place of rest. But a lot of people that I work with, they're frozen. And that's because in the freeze response, your brain is telling you that immobilization is essential for your survival. The freeze response is a mammalian defense mechanism that is designed to convey to a predator that you're dead, so it loses interest and walks away, because predators prioritize a prey that puts up a fight. And what that translates into whenever you're going through trauma is your brain is going to say, just quit. Just don't do anything. Just stay in your room and wait this thing out until you feel better. Why would you go play hockey or tennis or hang out with your friends whenever you don't feel like it, whenever you feel terrible? You're getting bombarded with symptoms. Why would you do that? Just wait in your room until things get better, and then you can go out there. Why would you do anything when you feel terrible? It's scary out there. It's dangerous. Just stay in your bed. I've worked with so many people that laid in their bed for months and months and months and months. And that's not a sign of weakness. That's not a character issue. That's them yielding to the very real voice of the freeze response, which is going to tell you to give up. So this is definitely connected to trauma, healing trauma, the art of never giving up, but it's also necessary to just live a good life, because life is a war. Life is warfare. You've got a lot of things going for you, but you've also got a lot of things going against you. And I don't want to list those out because that'll be its own video. But life is a war. And the quicker that you accept that, the quicker that you can go on the offense. For years and years and years, I lived my life just hoping that one day everything would just be great and I never have any issues and I never get rejected by people and go through betrayal and be let down and not feel good sometimes and all these things. And it never stopped happening. And I finally one day accepted, you know what? The battles aren't going to stop happening, which means I need to have weapons. And in this case, the weapons are metaphorical for tools that you can have in your toolbox to pull out, already have ready, so that way you're not in reaction mode whenever life hits you hardest. So here's one of those weapons. Let's get into it. You need to know this just in life in general. Number 1, you make a pre-decision to never quit. And notice I said pre-decision. You don't want to leave it up into you don't want to leave it up to the moment and how you feel to determine how you handle that situation. Because if you're in a bad state, which if you're wanting to quit, that probably means that you're in a terrible state for whatever reason, whether it's trauma or just even after you're healed from trauma, just life hits you hard with something. You are in such a bad state that if you leave it up to how you feel in that moment to determine what you do, you're going to make the wrong decision, and you're probably going to be very reactive, which our default is always to quit, because that's the freeze response. That's what happens whenever we feel overwhelmed, is we default to doing nothing. We're frozen. And I got this from Joe Rogan, and he said that whenever he gets off a plane, and let's say he's doing like a UFC fight or something, he has already made a pre-decision that he's going to go to his hotel and he's going to go to the gym in the hotel and work out. Because if he left it up to how he feels in the moment, he's probably not going to do it because he feels jet lagged. And so you've already made the decision. I'm not going to quit. The next time that something hits me out of nowhere, I've already decided that I am going to persevere until I overcome that thing. Right? I don't care what it takes. Come hell or high water, I am never going to quit. But then the second thing is you have to start to speak this out. I can tell a lot about a person by what they speak over themselves. I can tell where they're at because I used to speak very bad things over myself. I'm a failure. I'll never be able to do this. I'll never be able to do that. My self-talk was very, very bad, and it matters. Don't say things that make you weak. Don't say things that are reflective of identities that you don't want. And not only that, you need to do opposite of that. You need to go ahead and speak out who you want to be as if it's a present reality. So if you want to run marathons, one option is you could wait until you run the marathon and then say, I'm a marathon runner. But if you really, really, really want to participate in the behavior of a marathon runner, assume that identity now. I am a marathon runner. And your mind's going to be telling you, but you don't even own jogging shoes. You're 40 pounds overweight. Or you're like me and you basically just don't weigh anything. You're just a skeleton walking around. You're not a marathon runner. You literally haven't jogged in 5 years. But you speak it out as if it's a present reality. And there's something about identifying with something that makes you want to participate in that behavior. Who knows the psychology of that? But I'll tell you, generally, behavior is an outflow of your identity. So you say, I am somebody who never quits. I don't quit. That is who I am. And you start speaking this out throughout the day, right? And not just this, speak a lot of things about yourself that are positive and watch what starts to happen. The third thing, now that you've already made a pre-decision that you're not going to quit, number 3 is you have to find the root of the problem. You know, a big part of what I do with people whenever I'm coaching them to get out of anxiety and panic and trauma and depersonalization, derealization and health anxiety and existential anxiety and all these different things is I help them get to the root. Most people are not dealing with the root of their problems, whatever those problems look like. This extends to every area of their life. They're usually trying to fix what is actually a symptom of the problem. To use an example, it would be like the check engine light is going off on a car, and you're trying to get the check engine light to shut off instead of looking underneath the hood and looking at the engine. So what I do with people is I start to ask them questions, and I usually know what the root cause is just because I've been doing this with thousands of people for a while now. Sometimes I don't know the root and I have to ask them, but if I do ask them, I'll say things like, okay, so here's the symptom. Let's not assume that this is the problem. This is the symptom. Let's say, for example, you feel depressed. Instead of assuming that that's the root problem, let's ask some questions about this. Why do you feel depressed? A lot of people have never even asked that question, right? Think about it like a cup, right? Let's say that depression represents feeling empty. Let's say that this cup represents you, and the feeling of emptiness represents feeling depressed. Well, I'll tell you what typically happens is they get given this label of depression, and then they seek to try to manage the feelings of depression. But once you start to ask, why do you feel depressed? And let's get away from all these labels because they have a lot of conditioned understanding that's not accurate. All of a sudden, you slowly start to get to the root. Well, I feel depressed because I don't have anything good going on in my life. Okay, and then I'll ask them, well, what do you mean you don't have anything good going on in your life? What is something good that would be going good in your life that would make you feel less depressed? And they'll say things like, well, I don't really have any friends. I'm not really exercising. I'm not really eating healthy. I don't really have any hobbies. I don't sleep well. I'm dealing with these symptoms of trauma, and I don't get out much, and my diet's terrible, and I'm always ruminating about negative things all the time. I don't really have a mission in life. And I'm like, So depression is the absence of those things, those good things that you mentioned. Depression is the feeling that happens when you don't have those things in your life. So instead of us trying to manage the feelings of emptiness, why don't we spend our time filling up the cup, right? Now we're dealing with the root issue, and we fill up your life with all of these great things, with social connection. We get your sleep right. We get your diet right. We get you a mission in life, so you're not sitting around and ruminating. We get you some social connection. We start having you exercise. These are all things that have been proven to reverse the feeling of depression. I can show you the studies. And then all of a sudden, we dealt with the depression indirectly. We never had to directly deal with it because that was never the problem to begin with. And whenever you're going through something in life, you can't assume that because it's a problem that it's the root problem. It actually may be a symptom of the root problem. You have to ask questions. Ask like 3 or 4 why questions. Well, why is this happening? Okay, well, why is that happening? And then why is that happening? Then why is that happening? And then you will get to the root. And once you have determined that you're not going to quit and you're starting to deal with the root issue, the next thing that will start to happen is progress. And even if, let's use this example, you're feeling depressed, you start filling up your life with stuff, you're going to start to feel less and less depressed. And once you start to see results because you're dealing with the root, that builds a momentum in your life. Even if you don't have the cup fully filled up, which represents the finish line where you fix that thing, even starting to see a little bit of results will represent change and it will build momentum. But a lot of people never start to see even a glimmer of results because they're sitting, spinning their wheels with something that's the symptom and is not even the real root problem. The next thing, you use avoidance-based motivation to help you stay consistent while you're dealing with the root. When you start dealing with the root, sometimes, depending on what we're talking about, you might feel worse at first because like let's say with trauma is a body that is constantly preparing for a threat that never comes. A lot of people are pretty numb to something called interoception, the experience of the embodied self. And whenever they start to get in tune with their body again, and they've been checked out, living in their head, doing things to numb their body, you might feel worse at first. This happens with my clients all the time. They're like, what the heck? It was almost better being numb. And I'm like, yeah, but trauma healing begins with feeling. Because you can't release something until you feel something. We can't release the tension, energy, and emotion in your body unless you first feel it. You can't know when you're pushing your body beyond its limits until you start to feel that. And they need something to push them through to be consistent until they start to see results, metaphorical for filling up the cup. Once you see results, that becomes the motive. Motivation is not a feeling, it means to possess a motive. Once you've been disciplined long enough to see results, the results themselves become the motive. But there's that little frustrating chasm between whenever you start dealing with the root and whenever you start seeing enough results to motivate you to continue. And that's where you have to use avoidance-based motivation. Avoidance-based motivation is where you focus on something that you want to avoid to give you the motive to be disciplined. Discipline is doing what you don't want to do, doing what you don't want to do, even though you need to do it, right? Did I say that right? You're doing what you need to do, even though you don't feel like it. And the motivation is the motive that compels you to be disciplined. And so by focusing on what you want to avoid, it becomes a compelling enough motive to push you to be disciplined until you can start to see those results. So what does that look like? I'll give you an example. I use avoidance-based motivation every day because at this point in my career, I have to do a lot of stuff that I don't want to do, a lot of stuff that's very boring, especially, just like I'm not talking about coaching people. That's actually the fun part, but just the technical side of things and the business side of things, the things that I don't want to focus on at all, but I have to in order to be able to pay my family and pay my team. I don't want to do that. So I need a motive to compel me to do that. So I think, okay, if I don't do this boring crap that I don't want to do, I'm not going to be able to feed my family. That's a big one that I use all the time. And I'm not going to be able to pay my team. And so my desire to avoid that becomes a compelling enough motive to make me disciplined to do the things that I don't want to do. It's that simple. Find the thing that you want to avoid more than anything, the catastrophic outcome that you want to avoid. And every time that you don't want to do something, specifically dealing with the root of the problem that's going to help you get out of the funk that you're in, bring that to your remembrance. Well, I want to avoid this catastrophic outcome, whatever that looks like for you, right? Maybe you're struggling to lose weight and it's getting really bad. I want to avoid dying of a heart attack, so I'm going to get my diet right. Maybe your marriage is falling apart, so you say, you know what? I want to avoid my marriage falling apart, so I'm going to work on communication. I'm going to work on this thing and this thing. Whenever it comes to dealing from trauma, I want to avoid feeling like I'm going crazy and feeling like I'm going to be stuck in these symptoms forever, so I'm going to do the things that I need to do to get to the root. You focus on what you want to avoid, and that compels you to be disciplined until you start to see results. And once you start to see results, oh my gosh, especially with my clients, once they start to feel normal again, it's like, we call it a glimmer. They get a glimmer of feeling connected and normal, and that right there is a game changer, because then they start to realize, okay, like if I just keep doing this stuff, everything is going to change. The last thing, and this is super important, is you have to be patient. This is one thing I tell my clients all the time. We live in a microwave society. We want everything instant, but especially with healing trauma. But technically, anything that's going to be a major transformation, it's not going to happen overnight. I tell my clients, I'm like, listen, your brain is wired to do everything opposite of what you need to do to get out of these symptoms. Right? Your brain is wired to resist the symptoms when you need to invite them in. Your brain is wired to have you avoid sensory triggers when you need to expose yourself to them. Your brain is wired to have your body tense up all the time when you need to relax your body. Your brain is wired to make you suppress emotion when you need to face emotion. Your brain is wired for you to be a people pleaser instead of having boundaries with people. Every single thing, and the list continues on. Every single thing that you need to do right now is not what you're doing. In fact, the default settings are opposite of what we need to be doing. So to go through this process where we're rewiring your brain, literally changing the neural connections in your brain to have these new responses, to listen to your body, to self-regulate, to face the things that you're avoiding and all these things, that's going to take some time. You know, if you've ever seen the Christmas Vacation movie, if you're very old like me, Chevy Chase, there's this scene where Chevy Chase hands his son, what's his name? Rusty. He's like, here you go, Russ. And it's this big tangled up ball of Christmas lights. And he says, here you go, Russ. And Russ like holds onto this giant ball of like Christmas lights that are all tangled up. That's kind of like healing trauma. Right? That represents the neural highways of threat association that are the byproduct of all kinds of things that you're doing in your life and not doing in your life that we need to start doing. And you're going to have to accept that whenever you're dealing with the root issue, whether it's trauma or whatever you're dealing with in life, it's going to take more work. It's a lot easier to just manage the symptoms. That's why all the acceptance programs and the distraction stuff, that'll always be what a lot of people go to before they come to me. Because, oh, all I got to do is just accept. All I got to do is just distract away. And you know what? Some of those people see results that are temporary because they picked the apple off the tree. Well, the apple's gone. It worked. You didn't deal with the roots. And the apple may be gone for right now, which represents the symptoms, but because you didn't deal with the roots, I'll see you in 6 months. I'll see you in a year. I'll see you in 3 years. I cannot tell you. I've got a guy, I'm about to post his full recovery interview. He came into my program. He literally had 3 times that his anxiety and depersonalization, realization, and other symptoms completely went away. But it just kept coming back after a couple years over and over and over again because he either calmed his nervous system through reassurance or just distraction or this thing, but he didn't deal with the root. And then all of a sudden he's got like 20 plus people that are working for him. He's married, and all of a sudden everything is just falling apart because he never dealt with the root issue, right? When you deal with the root, it takes more time. Right? What major transformation have you ever had that didn't require a lot of work and a lot of time? Think about it. it's going to take a lot more time, but that should show you that that's why this is valid. If it was easy, that means you're probably not dealing with the root. The fact that it's taking time should show you that it's because you're actually dealing with the root. Remind yourself of that. That's what I tell my clients. I'm dealing with the root now. I'm not just managing symptoms or trying to numb symptoms or distract or accept symptoms. I'm dealing with the things in my body and my life that are causing this so I can become symptom-free and never have to deal with this again. And there's a price tag on that. And one of those price tags is time. And you've got to be patient and give yourself the time that you need to deal with the root. That's it. So make a pre-decision to never quit. Speak out. I never quit. I'm somebody who never quits. Make it a part of your identity. Number 3, find the root problem and focus on the root. And you can ask different why questions to get to that. Number 4, use avoidance-based motivation. Focus on what you want to avoid, and that will give you a compelling enough motive to push you to be disciplined until you see enough results for the results to become the motive that pushes you until you're out of the problem. And then number 5 is be patient, because change takes time whenever you're dealing with the root. If you will do these 5 things, you'll be unstoppable. I know you will, because I'm living it every day. I rarely get thrown off, and if I do, I get up really, really fast. And it's partly because of exactly what I just told you, because whenever I've already made the decision I'm not going to quit, and then I immediately start thinking, how can I fix the root of this? That's one reason why I'm able to bounce back so quickly, and honestly, why I don't really fall down that much, metaphorically speaking, is because once you deal with the root, especially if it's a common problem that you've already kind of got a standard operating procedure for what to do in that situation, bam, 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 you can overcome it sometimes in minutes, sometimes seconds, depending on what it is. And a lot of times, it doesn't even throw you off anymore, because you know what the root is and you know how to deal with it. That is it. I know this is a long video, but we're talking about something, 21 minutes or whatever, 22 minutes. Watch this a couple different times. Write this out. Get it into your DNA, and you will become somebody who never freaking quits. And it's going to be awesome. All right, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Like it, comment it, share it if you know somebody that needs this advice right now. Peace out. Oh, that was weird. I'll never say that again.